Hello and welcome to our Win Wednesday webinar. I am so honored to have you with us. I know that so many of you are watching after the fact, but we are on with Emily and Audrey right now. Our darling Emily is going to share her heart with you. And oh my goodness, you are so blessed. This is your lucky day. So I want to tell you about her. I've known and loved this woman. She's as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside for many years. So she's the creator of the new self-empowerment. It's a simple yet very powerful system that teaches you how to heal your inner struggles. And I love this because we all have inner struggles. Every woman on this planet has inner struggles, some, greater than others, but it's true. And to honor your inner powers. I love that because we all have those. And to live fully your truth. So she's discovered that there are within us, everyone, 3 M powers, and these empower us to live our truth. She also discovered 3 X powers, and these are they block us from fully living that truth. So her wonderful drawing out process, it heals our X powers. Emily says, quote, "When we honor our M powers and heal our X powers, then we are fully empowered to live our truth." Her mission, and I love this, is to heal humanity. What better mission could you possibly have? So her presentation today is the new empowerment, how to heal your wounds and reveal your wisdom. That, I turn it over to my beautiful friend, Emily Eldridge.
Thank you so much, Paula. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up. Sorry, it's not COVID. It's just something in my throat. Anyway, thank you so much for that introduction. And it is absolutely my honor, my pleasure to be here. This is such a great opportunity. I love sharing my work. What I'm going to do today is give you all a crash course in the new self-empowerment, because this is a system that I developed actually out of my own struggles. So this isn't some sort of thing I kind of dreamt up one day. This really did come out of having to go inside and face my own inner darkness, my own inner demons, and find out what's really there and what's the truth about what's really going on inside of all of us, because I find that most people are walking around in this world wounded and hurt and struggling with all these wounds, all these defense mechanisms. And then that ends up getting expressed outwardly, and we end up hurting each other, we hurt ourselves. And so that's really where it ultimately has led to this mission to heal humanity from the inside out, because as I see it, that is really the problems that we see, whether it's manifesting in terms of the environment or in terms of poverty or hunger and these other struggles and strife that we see in our world and some of us struggle with, is that I see it as humanity is sick. Humanity is wounded, and we really need to learn the truth about what's going on inside, the truth about those wounds, and the truth about how to heal those wounds so that we can really live together in greater, well, starting first and foremost within, live with peace, live with clarity, live with joy, live from a deep self-understanding and self-honoring, so that we can then in turn bestow that on others and be more peaceful in the world. And actually, what's fun about this work is you end up, as you start to work on heal your own inner struggles, you start to recognize how it's expressed in other people. And so as your inner triggers are healed, you're less triggered by other people, which of course then, de-escalates potential conflict and things like that. So this whole thing has a lot of applications, and excuse me. So that's what I'm really excited to share. What I'm going to do today is give you all a crash course basically in the new self-empowerment. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to tell you about how I ended up developing it. And then yes, we're going to go into the 3 types of inner struggles, which I call X powers, and how they relate to our 3 types of powers, which empower us to live our truth. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, the new self-empowerment. Can you all see that?
Yep.
How to heal your wounds and reveal your wisdom. So I like to start with who am I, because obviously it's like, who is this woman who's sharing this information and how does she know what she knows? Well, my name is Emily Eldridge. I am the founder of the New Self-Empowerment. As I mentioned, it did come out of my own inner struggles. So what I'm going to share with you, again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. This really did come from my own inner work and working with clients and really studying the truth about what is really going on inside of people, as opposed to through like a psychological lens or a therapeutic lens or what have you. Nothing against those, but really almost from a very raw place to really see what's really going on. So founder of the New Self-Empowerment, and then that's actually led into my work as a leader, healer, and advisor. So I work with people in leadership positions, and that's a calling that I received a few years ago. Really, I recognize now, I received the calling, and then afterwards I was like, oh, okay, so that's why I'm supposed to do this, is that actually so many of our problems with humanity and so many of our sickness, our illness, and a lot of the dysfunction that we see is because we have wounded leaders, because we have people who are leading us not from a place of wisdom, but from a place of from their wounds, and usually their subconscious wounds. I'm not saying that these leaders recognize that that's what's happening. And so I find that if we can heal our leaders, then we have healthier leaders who can model healthier behavior, who can attract healthy people, who can lead with love and wisdom and kindness and peace and even some amount of vulnerability, humanity. So that's what I do now. I'm also the author of Light, Dark Truth. It is a forthcoming book. It has not been published yet, but if you want excerpts from that, there's a link at the end of the presentation, lightdarktruth.com, and you can receive free excerpts of that. And it's a book that really is bringing together almost everything I've discovered, really the basics of the New Self-Empowerment. And the whole purpose is to teach people who read it, here's how you do this, and here's how you do this, here's how you heal those struggles, here's how you honor those powers, and here's how you live your truth. Because as I find that the more we live our truth, the more we light up. And when we light up the world. So these are just some pictures of, places I've been, places I've spoken. So it's like the UN and Parliament, and that other one is a talk show, and I think it was Kurdistan. So anyway, the point is I've been really honored, like I am today, to share this around the world, because this really does have universal applications. And in terms of my TED Talk, interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see, it says DRC inmate. My TED Talk was actually given at the very first TED event, official TED event in a prison. It was in Marion Correctional in Ohio. And it was because the guys there heard about TED Talks. They don't have internet. So somebody had brought in some videos. And one of the guys said, we can do that. We can put that on. And so they created their own TED events. And ever since then, it has spread throughout prisons throughout the world. It's been amazing. So it was a huge honor to get to speak. And actually the name of it is called The Truth About Inner Demons. If you want to Google that, you can, or it's on my website. But the point is that in that, I talk about that, as I said, this work came out of my own inner struggles and learning the truth about those inner struggles. I called them inner demons at the time, but now I call them your inner X powers, because they feel like they work against your power. And we all have these. And so the truth is that, let me start back in 2009. 2009 is where, right after a period where I really thought everything was finally coming together in my life. I'd struggled for a really long time to figure out, what is my truth? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? And I've been blessed with a lot of different talents in acting and singing and graphic design and writing and a lot of different things. And so I tried a lot of things over the years, and I just couldn't figure out, what is my thing and how can I best serve the world? And so finally, it was like everything was coming together. In 2007, 2008, I met this man that I thought I was going to marry. And, we formed a business partnership with this couple, and we created this, a website, and it was like everything was finally coming together, and I was finally going to serve my purpose. And you can guess what happened. It all fell apart. And I fell apart too. I fell into a deep, dark night of the soul in which I felt like I had no purpose. There was no joy. And even when I tried to think about what would bring me joy, it was just darkness just came over me, and I couldn't see beyond it. And so I really, really struggled for a while. I was almost practically suicidal until one night I reached out to, I was in a really, really bad way. And I had this horrible self-loathing inside that was pretty much like coaxing me to end it all. And I realized that if I ended it all, that would be bad. And to understatement. But the point is that I needed help. And so I reached out to the one person. It was late at night, and I reached out to the one person who I knew at least would be awake, and that was my mother. My mother is a psychotherapist. I joke that I've gotten a lot of free therapy, which has been great. But the point is, she just listened to me, and I just sobbed, and I just vomited out all this awful, awful stuff that I was feeling, just hating myself, feeling completely worthless and purposeless and useless and like a complete failure. And anyway, at the end of the call with her, I thanked her for listening to me. And she said something really interesting, because I hadn't actually used this word, but the thing that she said to me was, Emily, I would never want to leave you alone with a bully. And I thought, well, that's weird, because I never said anything about a bully. I was just talking about how much I hated myself and how horrible I was feeling about myself and what a failure I was. But the fact that she said bully turned on a light inside of me. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe that's what this is. It's not me. It's not me beating myself up. It's something inside me. It's like an inner bully that's beating me up. So the next morning, I ended up writing about this, living with a bully inside me, and I was going to write a blog, post it or something. But the point of writing about it was to try to feel better, and yet I wasn't feeling any better. It was still there. But as I was writing about living with this bully inside me, I started to get these like flashes, almost like a strobe light. It just started to get flashes of what this bully looked like. And it was horrible. It was disgusting and bloody. And it was like a monster, like you would imagine seeing in like a deep, dark, horrible place, like this vicious monster. So I'm seeing this monster and I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know what this thing is. I just want to get rid of it. So maybe if I just draw this thing, I'll just get it out of my system. Now, I'd never done anything like this ever before. But I sat down, I went home. I had been at a coffee shop. I went home, I grabbed some crayons, I grabbed some paper, and I was like, okay, just scribble. And I didn't think about it, I just drew. I wasn't going to try to analyze this thing. And so sure enough, here's what I drew. This guy. This guy, girl, I don't know what it is. But this is what I drew that day back in 2009. And if you notice that he's I think he's pretty vicious looking, pretty scary. He's got spikes. Everything about him is sharp and pointy. He's covered in this fur. He's got claws. He's got fangs. His nose is pointy. His eyes are pointy. And actually, if you can see, coming from those spikes is red. That red is blood. That was my blood, because he had basically torn me up. He'd ripped me to shreds from the inside. That's how he felt to me. And that's how he came out on the screen, on the paper. There's something else that's interesting too about this. And I remember at the time I kept trying to change this. Notice how he's smiling. I should say it, because at the time I called it it. It's smiling. And I kept trying to make that smile, like, turn that smile upside down. Like, no, it can't be smiling. It's vicious. It's mean, but it wasn't. I had to trust it. It was, in other words, I had to trust that's what I was seeing. It was smiling because it had won. It had triumphed. It got me, and it got me to pay attention. But here's the amazing thing about what happened next. Within minutes, and I drew this, and then I drew a couple more like details. Within minutes after I had finished drawing this terrifying monster inside of me, it just disappeared. It just dissolved. I mean, it was like, and the way I describe it, it was like, whereas there had been this, this struggle and this pain and this self-loathing, it just went, it was gone. And it was like all this energy just opened up inside me. And I felt amazing. And I felt peaceful for the first time in months, if not years. And I thought, wow, this is kind of amazing, because I'd tried all these other techniques up until then to heal and to feel better about myself. This worked like nothing else. So what ended up happening, oh, here's the special dissolve. Watch, he's going to disappear now. I forgot to hit that. But the point is that then made me realize, I thought, you know what, there's something really special about this, and I'm just going to keep doing it. So going forward, anytime I had any kind of struggle, any kind of block, any kind of trigger, any kind of insecurity, any kind of addiction or habit or whatever that would pop up, I would draw it. And these are just a few of my drawings. So, I had fat monster. So I felt really fat. So I drew like how I felt. there was one back there that was like, he had a boxing gloves. So I, drew him because it felt like no matter what, he just wanted to hit people back. And so as I drew out these parts of myself, and this guy's a dream grabber, by the way, and it was sort of like, almost like anytime I had any sort of joyful thought, he would go, nope. And he'd snatch it. And it was this, it's just the feeling inside of me. So what I would do would just trust and just draw. And you can see I'm not an artist. I'm very colorful, but I'm really not an artist. But the point is that I felt better and better and better. I mean, to the point where other people were saying, what are you doing? Because you're seeming really good now. Whereas I'd been really depressed for quite a while before then and really struggling. People were saying, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm doing this drawing thing. It's kind of cool and it's working, So I just kept drawing and drawing. Now, what happened over time is that as I drew, I discovered that there were certain ones that just with drawing alone, it didn't go away. And over time, I discovered that so there was one in particular where I drew him and he wouldn't go away. I called him Critical Love Monster. And it was like he was just criticizing me and tearing me down. And no matter how much I drew him or tried to meditate he just didn't go away until finally I got so exasperated. I was standing in my living room and I started yelling at him. Now, mind you, this is like a thing inside me, but I just was like, why won't you leave me alone? Why won't you go away? And what was so crazy is he answered. And I ended up having this inner dialogue with this part of me. Now, this may sound crazy, but if you think about how many inner dialogues we have with ourselves, like if you really pay attention, we do a lot of self-talk. Well, in this case, I was really honoring that this was some part of me and I was having a conversation with it. Well, sure enough, after having this conversation, I learned what he was trying to do. He had learned to criticize me because he thought that was a form of love, because that's how I'd been treated by people in my own life. And he also thought, if I criticize you, then you'll fix whatever's wrong with you, and then other people won't criticize you. So the point is, he taught me that he was trying to criticize, he was criticizing me to try to protect me from criticism. Now, that may sound completely counterintuitive, and it really is, but that's actually the way a lot of the logic works for a lot of these parts of us. And so that was a huge discovery, like, oh, he's not trying to hurt me. He's actually trying to protect me. And once I explained to him, okay, I get it. I see you're trying to help me. You're trying to protect me. You're trying to take care of me, whatever way you know. But guess what? It's not working. You're still hurting me. I mean, I literally said that to it. And as soon as I said that to this part of me, it just went, and he immediately went from being critical and mean to apologetic. Like, again, I know this may sound crazy, but this is what happened. Went to apologizing. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was hurting you. Oh, and it was so weird. It was like this weird, like, energy shift inside of me. But the point is, he soon disappeared. So my point is this, that working with these parts taught me the truth. And I'm going to share more truths with you, but they were telling me, they were teaching me how to work with them, and the truths about what these parts inside of us are really about, who they are, why they exist, what they're trying to achieve, and how we can actually guide them to permanently release and be at peace so that we can be at peace. Because that's what this is all about. It's about getting out of our own way and getting these parts of us out of the way. And rather than them working against us, again, that's why I call them ex-powers, because they feel like they're working against our power, have them work for us, which is really ultimately what their purpose is. And we're going to get into that too. So with that said, I started working with clients. People were coming to me. And as I was working with clients, I noticed that some of these different, I didn't call them X-powers at the time, but I'll call them that now. Some of these different X-powers, they were saying like verbatim the same things in completely separate people. Like completely different people. You'd have one monster saying one thing and another monster and somebody else saying exactly the same thing. And I finally realized, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? There has got to be a pattern, and I'm going to find it. So I did. I sat down in my parents' living room and I laid out all these drawings that I'd amassed from my clients and with my, with my own work. And I figured out that there are 3 types of inner struggles. And this is important because it's all about, it's not that when a part shows up, you don't necessarily have to know which type you're dealing with, but it's an interesting look at the different ways that our inner system, our inner emotional, energetic system, whatever these are, right? The way that it tries to protect us and take care of us and whatever way it knows. And also the ways that it carries our wounds and deals with our wounds. So I'm going to quickly show you the 3 types, and then I'm going to show you separate slides of each one. So the 3 inner X power types are controllers, defenders, and woundeds. Okay, so these are the 3 types. And by the way, as I explain these, sorry, I'm readjusting here. As I explain these, just pay attention to if you notice these inside of you. And if you do not shame yourself for having these. We all have these. I have had copious ones of all of these over the years. I mean, it's crazy, like a whole big, fat, crazy world's going on inside of me. Of course, they're all healed now, and I don't have too many pop up anymore. But that's what this is all about, right? It's healing these parts, but it's also healing them by understanding them. And that is one of my main intentions, is to teach people the truth about what's going on inside, because when you know and you can recognize, then you can learn to have a more harmonious relationship with these parts of you, and even help them transform back to being parts of your power and working for you. So controllers, defenders, and woundeds. Let's start with controllers. These tend to show up as critical, pressuring, nitpicky, fear-mongering, judgmental, and oppressive. So it's like the name suggests, they like to control. Now they may try to control you or a part of you. So for example, an inner critic, so like that monster that I described, would be a controller. It was trying to control me. It was trying to hold me down and hold me back. It was trying to, it was telling me I was a failure. So that's an inner critic, is a classic inner controller, okay? So, and also the critical love monster was another controller, classic inner critic. The second type, defenders, defensive, angry, righteous, protective, arrogant, and violent. Just a reminder, these are parts inside of us. So I know that we may look at these and kind of go, oh, I know people just like that. Yes, they may externalize some of these behaviors, but really it's actually really, that's a whole other conversation about what's showing up on the outside of someone versus what's really happening on the inside of someone. So a defender would be an inner part that's very defensive, angry, righteous, protective, arrogant, and or violent. In fact, when I've worked with inmates, a lot of times the defender is that part of them that, for example, if they committed their crime in a blind rage, that was probably that defender part of them that felt like they were being threatened. The person was being threatened. And so therefore that defender took control and ended up committing the crime. Not all the time, but this is oftentimes, I've worked with actually a lot of murderers, and that's a lot of times what it was. But anyway, so the defender is the second type. Now the third type is what I call inner woundeds. Okay. And woundeds, as you can imagine, carry our wounds. They are the parts of us that are sad, scared, tantruming, neglected, powerless, hopeless, helpless, defenseless. And they oftentimes are, sometimes we can find, when they show up, when I work with someone, sometimes they show up like in a dark corner in a dark room wearing rags. Those are usually what I called the neglected wounded. So they're the parts of us that feel very neglected and sad, and they're sort of pulling away from the world, or like nobody cares about them. But sometimes, you can also have a tantrum or wounded, which is a little kid inside of us that's having a temper tantrum. And sometimes if we feel like we just want to sit down and have a temper tantrum, or stand up and clench our fists and scream and yell and have a temper tantrum, that is almost always because we have a wounded inside of us that's hurting, and it's desperate for attention. It's desperate to feel safe. The interesting thing about these 3 inner X power types is that the controllers and defenders really only exist because we have wounds, because of these woundeds. So the woundeds are really like the parts of us that are carrying the wounds, from having been hurt, from having been criticized or attacked or traumatized, or, feeling suppressed or oppressed or feeling not safe, even just to express ourselves can create an inner wounded. But then the controllers and defenders, because the woundeds, you notice it's like the inner child. They feel so defenseless. And so it's like these controllers or defenders are basically the defense mechanisms that we carry to try to protect that wounded. And sometimes those parts will see us as the wounded. So, the defender, if I talk to an inner defender, it may say, well, it's trying to protect the person. So it sees the person as not being able to protect itself or stand up for itself, themselves. So these are the 3 inner X power types. Okay, so we can have multiples of these inside of us. And when Paula mentioned the drawing out process permanently heals these. Now, people sometimes say permanently. Yes, that is my guarantee. Whenever I work with someone and it usually takes 2 to 3 hours to permanently heal one of these. And the reason why that's really, kind of special and cool is because I'll have clients who come to me and they'll say, oh, I've been going to therapy for 10 years about this issue. But now it's like, okay, I understand my problem, but it's still not gone. It still hurts. It still bothers me. I'm still reactive. And I say, okay, let's find out who's at the core of that reaction. And sometimes what will show up is a wounded. Sometimes we'll talk to a defender first that's protecting the wounded. It's this whole thing. But the whole point is that the drawing out process takes each of these types or any of these X powers through a process that I ended up developing in the aftermath of my own dark night of the soul, so that they no longer carry that pain anymore, so that they no longer carry those beliefs anymore, so that they go back to their original essence, which I will share with you in a minute. That's when we're getting into the empowers. But anyway, so as I said, if you have any of these inside of you, you are not alone. And if anything, one of the things I hope this is helpful for all of you is that as you see this and you say, oh my gosh, I have that, and to know that you're not alone, to know that you're not crazy, that these are parts that developed in direct response to traumas you experienced, or criticism, or even just certain societal pressures. Sometimes people ask me, what's the difference between X powers inside of women versus men? And well, for one thing, I will tell you that I've had a lot of boy X powers inside of me, so it's not gender specific. It's not as though all your X powers are girls or boys. But the point is that that sometimes just being a woman in certain societies, living in most of our societies are patriarchal, male dominated. And so as a result, a lot of us as women do carry, certain kinds of X powers and X power, reactions. So for example, in my upcoming book, there's a defender called, pardon my language, but my client called her Hell Bitch. And basically Hell Bitch was this raging woman, just so angry. She was this inner defender who was trying to get my client to stand up for herself because she'd seen her hurt so many times before. But my client had suppressed this part of her because, well, women aren't supposed to be angry. So here she has this very, powerful part of her trying to protect her, but she felt like she had to suppress it because as a woman, not okay to be angry. So in a lot of societies. So anyway, that's just to give you an idea. So these are the 3 inner X power types. But as I said before, here's the key about them. And the reason why this is important is because it can help you have a more harmonious relationship with these parts. Every X power inside you has good intentions for you. Okay? That may sound crazy, but they do. It is doing its very best to protect you or itself whatever way it knows. Okay, so every X power inside you has good intentions for you. It is doing its very best to protect you or itself whatever way it knows. Here's why this is so important. Because so often, whether consciously or unconsciously, we have been taught to fight these parts of us. We've been taught that these parts of us are bad. We've been taught that we need to resist them. We've been taught that, this is a part of us that's ugly and nobody else wants to be around. We've been taught that it's not okay to express our feelings. We've been shamed for this stuff. I was shamed. I was a very emotionally sensitive kid. And I think actually a lot of kids are, to be honest with you, but I was very emotionally sensitive. And I was shamed a lot for it because I would have these big reactions to things, and because I didn't feel heard or I felt criticized or what have you, but then I was shamed for having the reaction. And it wasn't bad intentions by the people who shamed me. It was just they were doing what they had learned. But the point is that I discovered that actually these parts are just trying to protect me whatever way they know. And also that as I started to undo this, as I started to, rather than fight my own emotional sensitivity or fight these parts of me, instead as I turned towards them and I sought to understand them and really just go, what are you about? What are you trying to do? Why are you here? And discover that they're just trying to protect me whatever way they know, or perhaps they were carrying those wounds from having been hurt. That's when then they released. And instead of fighting my own emotional sensitivity, I embraced it. And now I've discovered it's one of my greatest superpowers. So the point is, it's about, rather than fighting these parts of us and thinking there's something wrong with us for having these parts, like I'd been taught, and I'm sure you've been taught too, that there's something wrong with you for having this reaction or this emotion, or you shouldn't cry, or whatever the stuff is that people are taught, that instead of looking at it that way, so wait a minute, what if this thing isn't actually trying to hurt me? It's trying to just trying to take care of me whatever way it knows. It may not be okay. It is not okay for an inner critic to criticize you. I'm not saying that. But when we hear that critical voice or feel that inner criticism, instead of turning away or fighting it, or what if you just kind of go, well, okay, wait a minute. You know, that woman Emily said, not that you have to take my word for it, but what did you say to yourself? Okay, that lady Emily said that it has good intentions for me. It doesn't feel like what it's doing is really hurting me. But what if it is just trying to protect me, whatever way it knows? Just what if, right? Just being curious and, curious and interested. And then of course, drawing and doing things like that. So what is it that heals these parts? So here's what I've learned is that rather than pushing away from them, rather than resisting them, rather than pushing them down, rather than shaming them or ourselves for having these parts, what if we're just curious about them? What if we just are curious, and by learning about like these X-powers, controllers, defenders, woundeds, actually having a deeper understanding about what's really going on inside of us, not the stuff we've been taught that it's somehow we're carrying some flaw or weakness. No, because what if every part of you, what if you were divinely designed to live your unique truth, and that part of you may have just been temporarily distorted by pain and fear? What if that were the case? And I'm actually telling you that in my experience, that is the case. So instead of fighting them or resisting them or suppressing them and arguing with them or thinking there's something wrong with us for having them, what if we're just curious? What if you're just curious and go, what is this stuff? And being understanding what they're really about, not what other people have told you, but really, truly, what's really going on. And then being empathic. These inner struggles that you're carrying, they have seen you get hurt. They don't want you to get hurt ever again. Now, they may not know that what they're doing is hurting you, okay? It's hurting you and not helping you. That's the thing. They probably just don't know that they're hurting you. But my point is, they have seen you hurt too. So they're in pain, or they're just trying to keep you from being in pain. So that's where empathy comes in. As we start to, so for example, with the drawing out process, this is pretty much the sort of the arc that it kind of takes. We're curious, and then we learn to understand, we hear from it, we understand it, and then we can have empathy for it. And the person, when I work with a person and they're drawing out this part of them and I'm talking to it and they're hearing what that part of them is saying, then they learn to have empathy for it. I mean, I've had plenty of clients who have had like huge, horrible monsters show up inside of them. By the end of the session or towards the end of the session, they're just like, all of a sudden like, wow, I really care about him. I realized he was just trying to protect me whatever way he knew. Wow. And there's just this beautiful peace and just love and clarity and that they feel. So that's what this is about. So then, of course, the drawing out process is, so curiosity, understanding, and empathy are kind of the sort of, that's like the broth. If you think of this as like a soup, and it's like, this is sort of the broth of ingredients that are needed to really help an X-power heal, right? Not resistance and argument or, an argumentativeness, but really turning towards and being compassionate and understanding. And the drawing out process is the actual steps that I end up taking these three X-power types through, every X-power, or whatever it is. I take them through the steps of the drawing out process so that by the end, within those 2 or 3 hours, that part is permanently healed. And we go as deep as we can and we heal it from the root. So I keep saying that they have good intentions. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's some pictures actually of transformed X-powers. So you have a little inner child who's in pain, and then she says she's happy. Had a really angry young lady, teenager inside of one woman. And then by the end, it turned out that that was actually a part of this woman's creativity that had been suppressed and was angry because it didn't feel like it was being heard and valued and honored. And by the end, she went from being I forgot what the first name was, but then she transformed with the name Super Spice Girl or something. It's kind of cute. This final drawing here is by an inmate. And this was a little boy that he had inside of him. We actually had to go through a few layers to get there, but we found this little boy inside of him who felt, as you can see, he's in the dark, he's sad, he's scared, his arms are crossed. This is a man who was in prison for dealing drugs. And it was really fascinating, actually, to hear about why he dealt drugs, because to me, I look at it as it's not as though, well, I asked him, actually, what was that about? Long story shorter, he had felt so neglected and hurt and wounded as a little boy because he felt like his parents didn't care about him and he was just left to his own devices all the time. And he just desperately wanted connection and desperately wanted love, and he just didn't get it. But he discovered, when he became a drug dealer, that all of a sudden people wanted to be with him. They wanted to be around him. They wanted something from him. And so really what the drug dealing was about gaining the connection, that feeling of connection, as false as it may be. I understand it's drugs, but still the point is it was satisfying this emotional need that he had that he didn't get as a child. And so with this, healed the little inner wounded, well, he's the wounded little boy. And then by the end, he went from nighttime writer to daytime writer. I am what I am. And then that shirt, what's so cute about this shirt is, of course he's smiling and he's got a missing tooth, which the man actually does have some missing teeth, super cute. And, he explained, he said, when he drew this drawing as the final transformation of what this little boy transformed into. But what's so sweet is as he looked at it, he goes, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this while I was drawing it. But what's on the little boy's shirt, the smiley face with "Have a great day," he said that was what was on his grandmother's cookie jar. A big smiley face, "Have a great day." And he said that was one of the few just moments of joy and memories of joy that he had from his childhood was taking cookies from his grandmother's cookie jar. And then it showed up on this little boy's chest. And again, I want to use this actually as an example of that the subconscious is extraordinary. And the wisdom in our subconscious is extraordinary. Like I said, he wasn't thinking about what came out. It just came out. And there it is. And so that's what's fun too, is that our inner subconscious, there's a wisdom there that brings forward whatever needs to come forward. It is ready for healing. And then you end up with these just beautiful, beautiful results. So Paula mentioned that, we have X powers, but we also have 3 M power types. And I hope that by now you're curious what they are. So as I said, these parts transform back into their original essences. And their original essences are what I call our 3 inner M powers. Now our M powers are, okay, so the defender becomes the sovereign. And it's not always exactly one-to-one, but just for sake of simplicity, really the defender is just the distorted, wounded, a distorted part of the inner sovereign becomes defenders. Distorted part of the inner controllers, distorted part of the inner impresario becomes controllers, okay? And then our woundeds are actually just the distorted pain parts of our inner free spirit. So again, I'll break these down for you. These are our 3 inner empowers. And as Paula said, I call them empowers because they empower us to be who we are here to be. They empower us to live our truth. So one by one, the sovereign is the part of you that is very intuitive, powerful, independent, courageous, spiritual, and wise. So it's that inner intuition. It's that inner knowing. It's that inner clarity. It's the part of you that's not about thinking or feeling, but knowing. That knows, even though you're kind of like, I don't know why I know this, but I just know it. I know it from a very, very deep, peaceful place within. The second one is your inner free spirit, joyful, creative, spontaneous, innocent, playful, free. It just loves to be free and have fun. As you can see, it's like the inner child, and usually that is how it shows up. It shows up as an inner wounded. It transforms into this beautiful, sweet, free, joyful, playful, inner free spirit. I will say, take a moment to say that I think that in a lot of our societies, unfortunately, we have been taught to suppress that inner free spirit. And what I find in a lot of people, especially if they're burned out, is it's usually because they're not honoring that free spirited part of themselves. And here's, I think, why. This is all sort of separate little information for you, but is that we, for so many millennia, our civilization has been so focused on survival. Free spirit, your little inner child, doesn't know anything about survival. It just doesn't. It's not designed that way. The next one is more. But the point is, though, unfortunately, then oftentimes our inner free spirit, that inner child, because we think it can't contribute to our survival, then we end up unconsciously suppressing it. And also because in a lot of situations, in family situations, and we don't feel safe. This little inner child doesn't feel safe to express itself. So a lot of times that's why it becomes wounded. But this is a very, very, very powerful and vital part of you. Finally, your inner impresario. Logical, practical, strategic, organized, productive, conscientious. So this is the impresario. The term impresario actually is like another word for like a producer, like a musical or an orchestral or like a symphony producer. It's basically the part of us that is sort of puts the pieces together. It's kind of focused on what do you need? What are the practical strategic needs for your life? And so it focuses on that. And, what is it? It's sort of like the reason why I like calling it the impresario or the producer is it's like it takes care of the practical needs in order for the show of your life to go on. So it's like the free spirit might be sort of the creative, the artist, the artistic part. The impresario is more like the practical, here's what we need to get done. So it's very much about doing and getting things done. So these are the 3 inner M powers. And all of this is on my website. So thenewselfempowerment.com. But the cool thing is the drawing out process is a whole other process for, healing the X powers. There's a really simple technique that I can teach you right now for how to honor your M powers, because this can really get you started in achieving that balance that you may be missing. I've had clients who came to me and they were completely burned out. They were having to let go. They had their own businesses. They had to let go of their own clients because they were so burned out. And just by doing this one technique, it really had an impact. It really helped them to feel more balanced and whole and at peace. And so whatever your situation is, this can be a really powerful technique. So how do you honor your M powers? You're going to want to write this down. Or if you go to my website and you sign up to get the emails, then you'll actually get this printed out. You can get it printed out for you. So what you want to do is every morning before you really get up and do anything, or actually I have a client who puts it on her bathroom mirror, the postcard of these, and she asks them this question herself. But I find that I like to write it down. Is you want to ask each of those M powers individually. Now, again, that may seem kind of crazy. How can I talk to them? You'd be surprised. They are inside you. Now, some of them may seem kind of obscured because you've got a lot of inner struggles as well, but I promise you these M powers are inside of you, okay? So you want to ask each one of them individually, what's one small that would feel good for you. So it's asking each of them individually. So ask your inner impresario, what's one small thing I can do today that would feel good for you? You ask your inner sovereign, what's one small thing I can do today that would feel good for you? And free spirit, what's one small thing I can do today that would feel good for you? So you're getting each of their takes on what would feel good for them. And you're probably going to get very different answers. Sorry, I'm going to move around a little here. You're probably going to get very different answers because they are different parts of you. They are distinctly different parts of your power. And they also sort of have their antenna out for different things, right? So the free spirit's antenna is all about, let's just have fun. Let's just be free and have fun and be joyful. So the inner free spirit might say like, oh, color in your coloring book today. Or, I say this all the time, but it's like, mine's like, go get a cake pop from Starbucks, or sometimes the free spirit might be like, just get out of the house, just go for a walk. You just need to get out of here, which it's been saying to me a lot lately. The sovereign might say, go for a walk. The sovereign might say, do some chanting, do some breathing, do some praying, do some meditating. Or it might say, write in your journal. Sovereign's all about really wanting you to get in touch with yourself and really just breathe and focus within, whatever that does, whatever ways that you do that. And then the impresario is all about, okay, what do we need to get done today? You know, sometimes I'll ask my impresario, you know, so what's one small thing I can do today that would feel good for you? And you know what I get? Like a whole list of stuff. She'll be like, well, since you asked, and then like a whole list of things, which is great. So I write all of those down. But what then I'll end up doing is saying, okay, so what's the one thing out of all of these things that would really bring you the most satisfaction? And then she'll tell me, okay, do this. And when I do that thing, and it might be make that phone call, send that email. It might also be go for a walk. Again, this, you know, it just depends on whatever they are telling you. When I do that thing, it's like, it's like I've done 100 things. It just feels so good. Same thing with all of these. So it's all about honoring what feels good for them. And if it feels good for them, who else does it feel good for? You. So it's all about helping you feel better and you feel more empowered and more at peace. And the more you honor their requests and do what they ask you to do, what would feel good for them, the better you're going to feel, obviously, the more productive, the more accomplished you're going to feel just because you have done something to honor them, the more whole you're going to feel because you can feel their connection with you and your connection with them. And that the more you honor them also, the more there's that bond of trust between you where it's like, okay, you know, I'm going to do what you asked me to do, and then they can just empower you even more that way. So that's the that's the honor your empowers technique. I highly, highly recommend you write that down, give that a try. And also, so that was pretty much like a big crash course in the new self-empowerment, just to give you an introduction to the empowers, the X-powers, how this all came about. And then I have a free online course, totally free. I did that on purpose. I don't want there to be any barrier to people learning this information. I mean, as Paula said, my purpose is to heal humanity. Well, how can we heal humanity if some people can't afford some things? So that's why I have a lot of my information for free. And it's just go to thenewselfprogram.com, sign up for that, totally free, really easy. And mostly it's reading, and there are some recordings in there, some guided things. But also you can go to thenewselfempowerment.com, which is my website, and then you can get the excerpts from the book, lightdarktruth.com. If you are interested in working, first of all, I would really recommend you take the program first, just because it'll really give you a sense. But if you are already, you know that you really want to work with me, contact me directly, emily@emilyinternational.com. You can find that on the website. But contact me directly and let's talk about it. Let's talk about what your struggles are, and let's talk about what we can work out. I'm doing everything virtually right now, of course. Normally I do actually private intensives at my place in New York, but I'm in Arizona right now with my husband and not in New York, unfortunately. But also just for safety reasons, obviously I'm doing everything virtually. So we could always do sessions over the phone. So, and they're just as powerful. They're really, really incredible. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I guess that's the end of the slideshow. So I hope you enjoyed that. I see smiles. That's good. Hi, ladies. I missed you. I can't hear you though.
Oh my gosh, that was so fabulous. Oh my goodness. I told you you were in for a treat. This is an amazing woman, and she is so highly qualified to help you heal your inner struggles. And I encourage you to reach out to her. Have a conversation. Just, you know, she's giving you so much free and so many solutions. And I love that about Emily, but she is somebody you can go very deep with and do it knowing that no judgment, total open heart, just ready to heal your inner struggles. Everybody has them. And, you know, I just love her and honor her and the work that she's been doing for so long. So check her out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We love you. And if you have any questions, then just reach out to her. You always can email me and I can get to her too. So we love you and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Mwah.
Bye.